strength did not make humans the most powerful species on Earth. For decades, we were told it was muscle, speed, or sharp teeth that won the survival game. But none of that is true, and the real story is far stranger. 6 forgotten survival secrets quietly rewired our species long before we ever built a city. One of them explains why your own body still sweats the way it does today. Another one is the reason human babies need almost 2 decades just to grow up. A third secret is hiding inside every tool you have ever picked up in your life. A fourth and fifth secret are written into your own muscles and lungs without you even noticing. Stick with me, because by the end of this video you will understand exactly how a slow, weak, hairless primate outlasted every predator on the planet. Most people believe early humans survived because they were the strongest hunters in the wild. That belief is comforting, but it is almost completely wrong. Early humans were slower than lions, weaker than bears, and far less armed than almost every predator around them. A single bite from a hyena could crush bone that human jaws could never even dent. A leopard could climb a tree faster than any human could even begin to react. Even a startled antelope could outpace the fastest human sprint within just a few seconds. What they had instead was something far more powerful and far less obvious. They had cooperation, fire, tools, language, endurance, and the ability to build shelter almost anywhere on Earth. These 6 forces did not work alone, they fed into each other and multiplied. Today we are breaking down each one in the order scientists believe mattered most for human survival. Some of what you are about to hear will completely change how you see your own daily habits. Let's start with the secret almost nobody expects to be number 1. Cooperation sounds soft, almost weak, but it may be the single deadliest survival weapon ever developed. Imagine a group of early humans facing a season where the hunt fails again and again. In most animal species, that failure means starvation for the weakest members of the group. A lone wolf that cannot hunt simply dies with no backup plan from the rest of the pack. But early humans had a strange trick that most predators never developed. They shared food, even with people who were not their own children. Scientists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza found something remarkable about this pattern. Children in these groups do not produce more calories than they eat until their mid to late teens. That means a child can spend over a decade being a net drain on the group's food supply. For most of their reproductive years, women also consume more calories than they personally gather. Pregnancy, nursing, and childcare simply leave very little time left over for full-time foraging. That means an enormous amount of food had to come from somewhere else, every single day. It came from fathers, grandmothers, uncles, and even unrelated members of the same camp. Hadza bands are surprisingly unstable, with only about 1 in 5 members staying the same from year to year. People move freely between camps, yet the habit of sharing food travels with them everywhere they go. And yet, even among strangers, the habit of sharing food never disappeared. This is what researchers now call cooperative breeding or food sharing built into the structure of daily life. It explains a strange biological feature humans share with very few other animals: menopause. Most female mammals can reproduce until the day they die, but human women stop decades early. Older women who could no longer have children of their own kept helping raise grandchildren instead. This is known as the grandmother hypothesis, and the data keeps supporting it. Grandmothers, in study after study, improve the survival odds of their grandchildren. A child with an active grandmother nearby is statistically more likely to survive a difficult childhood. In some communities, a single grandmother can effectively keep 3 or 4 grandchildren alive through hard seasons. Picture a young mother who lost her husband during a failed hunting trip, leaving her with 2 small children. Without outside support, that family's chances of survival would have collapsed within a single bad season. Instead, the wider camp simply absorbed the gap, sharing meat and labor until she could recover. Fathers, uncles, and older siblings often add their own layer of support on top of this. This single relationship may have quietly shaped human lifespan more than almost anything else. Without this safety net of shared food and shared childcare, slow-growing human children would never have survived long enough to mature. Cooperation was not a nice extra, it was the foundation that every other survival secret was built on top of. Every tool, every fire, and every story depended on this invisible web of shared support. Now let's move to the second survival secret, the one written into every stone humans ever touched. Around 3.3 million years ago, something happened that should not have been possible yet. At a site called Lomekwi, researchers found stone tools far older than the appearance of our own genus, Homo. Whoever made them was experimenting with breaking rock long before brains had fully evolved for the task. This single discovery forced scientists to rewrite the timeline of when toolmaking truly began. Then, by roughly 2.6 million years ago, a new style of toolmaking appeared at a site called Ledi-Geraru. This was the beginning of what we now call the Oldowan tool tradition. These early tools were simple, mostly sharp flakes struck from larger stones. For more than 1 million years afterward, those tools barely changed at all. Generation after generation made almost the exact same shapes, with no real improvement passed down. Researchers measuring the complexity of these tools found something surprising. The designs stayed almost frozen in time. Then, around 600,000 years ago, something shifted dramatically. Tool complexity jumped from a handful of simple steps to as many as 18 separate procedures. Suddenly, toolmakers were planning several stages ahead instead of just smashing rock together. This kind of forward planning demands a very different kind of brain than simple trial and error. It requires holding multiple steps in mind before the very first strike of stone against stone. This was the true beginning of what scientists call cumulative culture, where knowledge builds instead of resetting. Each generation no longer had to invent tools from scratch, they simply improved what already existed. This single shift may be one of the most underrated turning points in our entire evolutionary story. Tools meant access to bone marrow, tough roots, hides, and wood that bare hands could never break open. A sharpened stone could cut through skin and muscle in seconds, work that would take human teeth forever. Without cumulative technology, humans would have been stuck repeating the same basic survival tricks forever. Instead, every improvement became a stepping stone for the next generation to build on. A father could teach his son a technique, and that son could later improve it himself. Imagine one early toolmaker discovering that striking a stone at a slightly steeper angle produced a sharper edge. That tiny discovery, once shared, could spread across an entire group within a single generation. A few generations later, that small improvement had become standard knowledge nobody even questioned anymore. This is the same principle behind every piece of modern technology you use today. Your phone, your car, and even this video exist because of that same ancient ratchet effect. Now let's talk about the discovery that completely rewired the human digestive system: fire. Possible fire use shows up in the archaeological record as far back as 1.5 million years ago. Sites like East Turkana and Chesawanja contain hints of ancient burning from this distant period, but these early traces are heavily debated among scientists. Natural wildfires could easily explain some of this evidence, making it hard to prove deliberate use. Stronger evidence comes from a site called Wonderwork Cave, dated to around 1 million years ago. Inside that cave, researchers found burned bone and ash deep within the chamber, far from any natural fire source. Even more convincing is a site called Gesher Beno Yaakov, where researchers found evidence of cooked fish from around 780,000 years ago. This suggests early humans were not just warming themselves, they were actively preparing food. Cooked fish would have been far easier to chew and digest than anything eaten raw straight from a river. By around 400,000 years ago, fire use across Europe finally becomes impossible to deny. Hearths, burned tools, and ash layers begin appearing consistently across multiple sites. Cooking did something extraordinary to the human body that raw food never could. It softened tough fibers, broke down toxins, and unlocked far more usable energy from the exact same meal. A raw root might give very little usable energy, while the same root cooked gives far more. Some researchers argue this is why human jaws became smaller, and our digestive tracts became shorter over time. Compared to other apes, our intestines use noticeably less of our daily energy budget to function. A smaller gut needs less energy to run, freeing up calories for something else entirely: a bigger brain. Brains are incredibly expensive organs, demanding a huge share of the body's total energy supply. In humans, the brain alone can consume around 1/5 of all daily energy, even at rest. That kind of energy bill could never be paid without the extra calories cooking provided. Fire also pushed back the darkness, scared off predators, and created the very first social gathering spot: the hearth. Around a fire, early humans could finally stay up past sunset and start doing something new: talking. Picture a small group huddled close as darkness fell, the flames keeping both cold and predators at bay. For the first time, there was free time after the sun went down, instead of just sleep or fear. This extra time around the fire may have quietly become one of humanity's first classrooms. Speaking of talking, that brings us to survival secret number 4: language and teaching. A tool is only useful if you can explain how to make another one. Without language, every single skill had to be relearned by watching alone, with no shortcuts available. Language allowed early humans to pass down complex instructions without physically demonstrating every single step. It allowed warnings about danger, plans for tomorrow's hunt, and stories that carried lessons across generations. A single warning shouted across a camp could save lives that a silent gesture never could. Teaching meant that one person's hard-earned mistake could become everyone else's free lesson. This is something almost no other species on Earth is capable of doing at scale. Even the smartest primates rely mostly on direct imitation rather than detailed verbal instruction. A chimpanzee can learn to crack a nut by watching, but it cannot be told why the angle of the strike matters. Humans could explain the reasoning behind a skill, not just the motion of performing it. Symbols also appeared early, with shell beads dated to between 82,000 and 70,000 years ago in parts of Africa. These beads were not just decoration, they were one of the earliest forms of human communication beyond speech itself. A necklace could signal identity, status, or belonging to a group, all without a single word being spoken. Imagine walking into a new camp and instantly knowing who belonged to which family, just by their jewelry. Language and symbols turned scattered individuals into something far more dangerous, a coordinated network of minds. A coordinated group could plan an ambush, share a warning, or pass down a memory across decades. A single elder story about a deadly river crossing could save the lives of grandchildren they would never meet. Now for survival secret number 5, a trait hiding in plain sight on your own skin right now. Humans are famously bad sprinters compared to almost any four-legged predator on the savannah. A cheetah could outrun the fastest human alive without even trying very hard. But over long distances, something strange happens that flips the entire competition upside down. Most animals cool down by panting, which means they cannot pant and run at full speed at the same time. A panting animal has to slow down or stop just to release built-up body heat. Humans cool down by sweating, which means we can keep moving even while our bodies release heat. Millions of sweat glands across human skin allow heat to escape constantly, even during a steady run. This allowed early humans to chase prey for hours under the brutal heat of the midday sun. While the animal overheated, the human pursuer barely slowed down at all. Eventually, the animal would overheat and collapse even without ever being caught in a short sprint. No spear, no trap, and no ambush was required, just relentless, patient movement. This strategy is known today as persistence hunting, and some hunter-gatherer groups still use it. Groups like the Sand People of the Kalahari have been observed using this exact same technique. A hunter might track a single animal for hours, simply waiting for the heat to do the work. No spear throw was even needed once the animal finally dropped from exhaustion. The hunter could simply walk up afterward and finish the work with bare hands or a basic blade. It required almost no weapons, just patience, endurance, and a body built for the long game. Long legs, an upright posture, and an efficient stride all support this same survival strategy. Your ability to run a marathon today exists because this trait kept your distant ancestors alive. Every marathon runner is, in a strange way, repeating an ancient hunting strategy without realizing it. Even the simple act of jogging is your body using a survival tool built millions of years ago. Finally, we arrive at survival secret number 6, the ability to build a home almost anywhere on Earth. Around 476,000 years ago, at a site called Colombo Falls, researchers found the oldest known wooden structure ever built. This was not a simple lean-to, it showed deliberate construction techniques passed down through careful planning. Notched logs were fitted together with clear intention, long before metal tools ever existed. This single wooden structure proves that planning ahead was not limited to stone tools alone. Shelter meant protection from weather, predators, and the kind of exhaustion that kills slowly over time. A dry, warm shelter could mean the difference between surviving winter and not waking up at all. Clothing followed a similar path, with bone tools for working hides appearing between 90 and 120,000 years ago. These tools allowed early humans to scrape, soften, and shape animal skins into wearable material. By around 40,000 years ago, eyed needles show up across Siberia, the Caucasus, and parts of Europe. A needle this precise meant clothing could finally be tightly sewn instead of loosely wrapped. Loose hides let cold air rush straight through, while tight seams trapped warmth close to the skin. These needles allowed tightly fitted clothing instead of loosely draped animal skins. Fitted clothing meant humans could finally push into freezing climates that would have killed them just generations earlier. This is how our species eventually spread from warm African plains into the icy stretches of Siberia. Without proper clothing, that journey into the cold would have ended in failure within days. Shelter and clothing were not luxuries, they were survival technology disguised as everyday objects. So here is what almost nobody tells you about human survival. It was never one single secret that saved our species. It was cooperation feeding into technology, technology feeding into fire, fire feeding into language, and language tying every single secret together. Each one made the others stronger, creating a survival system no other animal on Earth has ever matched. Take away just one of these 6 secrets, and the entire chain likely collapses. No fire means no cooked food means a smaller brain, and a smaller brain means no advanced tools. No cooperation means no shared childcare, and no shared childcare means human children simply do not survive. This is why scientists increasingly describe human evolution as a web of interlocking systems, not a single lucky trait. Remove any single strand of that web, and the whole structure begins to weaken. The truly strange part is that every one of these 6 secrets is still active inside your life today. You share resources with people who are not your blood relatives. You use tools built from knowledge passed down by people you will never meet. You sweat through long days the exact same way your ancestors did on the open savanna. You wear clothing engineered from techniques that trace all the way back to ancient bone needles. Even a simple seam on your jacket is a distant descendant of that ancient survival breakthrough. And you are listening to spoken language right now, the same survival tool developed hundreds of thousands of years ago. Every modern convenience you rely on is just an advanced version of one of these 6 ancient secrets. None of this happened by accident, and none of it happened quickly either. It took millions of years of small adjustments, failures, and quiet breakthroughs to reach where we are now. If this kind of evidence-based history fascinates you, there is one video you genuinely cannot miss next. It uncovers something even stranger about how ancient humans chose who to marry, and why that choice still shapes society today. Click on that video now, because once you see this pattern, you will notice it everywhere around you.